Welcome to Sharp Angle. Today we're looking into one of the boldest and most controversial moves yet from President Trump. He has signed an executive order to criminalize burning the American flag. Yes, you heard that right. Despite decades of Supreme Court precedent protecting flag burning as free speech, the president has decided to test the limits of executive power and the First Amendment. This story isn't just about a piece of cloth, it's about freedom, dissent, and the future of American democracy. Let's start with the facts. In 1989, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Texas v. Johnson that burning the American flag, as offensive as it might be, is a form of symbolic expression protected under the First Amendment. The decision was reaffirmed in 1990 in United States v. Eichmann. For decades, that was considered settled law. But now, in 2025, President Trump has signed an executive order directing the Department of Justice to prosecute anyone who burns or desecrates the American flag in public. The order frames flag burning as an attack on national unity and a threat to public safety. Violators could face fines or jail time. Here's the constitutional conflict in plain English. The Supreme Court has already ruled twice that flag burning is protected speech. An executive order cannot simply erase those decisions. Under the American system, the judiciary interprets the Constitution, not the president. So this order is almost guaranteed to face immediate legal challenges. Civil liberties groups like the ACLU have already promised to sue. That means we're looking at a looming showdown between the White House and the courts over the meaning of the First Amendment. Now let's talk politics. Why would Trump do this, knowing it will almost certainly be blocked? Because politics isn't always about winning in court, it's about winning in the court of public opinion. Flag burning is one of the most unpopular forms of protest in America. Polls show that nearly two-thirds of Americans disapprove of it. By moving against it, Trump positions himself as the defender of patriotism, waving the flag literally and figuratively heading into election season. For his base, it's red meat. For his opponents, it's a constitutional crisis. Either way, it dominates the headlines. History gives us perspective. The debate over flag burning isn't new. In the 1960s and 70s, it became a flashpoint during protests over the Vietnam War. Congress tried multiple times to ban it through legislation, only to be struck down by the courts. In the early 2000s, there were attempts to pass a constitutional amendment banning flag desecration. None succeeded. Why? Because even when protest is ugly, the principle of free expression runs deeper. America was founded on the idea that offensive dissent must be protected. Let's go deeper into the law. The First Amendment protects not just words but symbolic acts: burning a draft card, wearing an armband, kneeling during the anthem. The court has consistently ruled that government cannot ban expression simply because it is offensive. That principle is what separates democracy from authoritarianism. If this executive order stands, it opens the door to punishing all kinds of protest, kneeling NFL players, student walkouts, even satirical art. That's why legal scholars call it a direct assault on the constitutional order. Reactions have been swift. Civil liberties organizations condemned the move as unconstitutional. Several Democratic governors have said they will not enforce the order in their states. Republicans are split. Some cheer the president for standing up for the flag. Others worry about government overreach. On Capitol Hill, expect fiery hearings and dueling. In the streets, activists are already planning demonstrations and, yes, some may burn flags deliberately to challenge the law. So what does this mean for ordinary Americans? First, precedent. If flag burning can be criminalized despite Supreme Court rulings, what other rights could be next? Could student protests be banned? Could satire be prosecuted? Second, policing. Imagine local cops being told to arrest protesters for burning flags at rallies. That's a recipe for more clashes, more lawsuits, more chaos. Third, democracy itself. The balance of power between branches of government is at stake. If a president can override the Supreme Court with the stroke of a pen, the system of checks and balances starts to collapse. Internationally, the optics are troubling. America has long positioned itself as the champion of free expression around the world. When the U.S. government tries to jail people for symbolic protests, authoritarian regimes in China, Russia, and elsewhere will be quick to point out the hypocrisy. Credibility matters. If Washington can't uphold free speech at home, it loses moral authority abroad. That impacts everything from diplomacy to trade to human rights advocacy. On social media, the battle is already raging. Hashtags like hashtag free speech, hashtag flag burning ban, and hashtag constitutional crises are trending. Videos of protesters burning flags in defiance of the order are going viral. For younger Americans, especially, this issue feels less about patriotism and more about liberty. It taps into the same energy as campus protests, climate strikes, and movements for racial justice. The idea that the government should not dictate how citizens express themselves. Let's add the economic angle. At first glance, you might think, This is just a cultural battle. But culture wars have costs. Lawsuits will consume taxpayer dollars, policing protests will stretch city budgets, and every day spent fighting over flags is a day not spent on inflation, healthcare, or infrastructure. For families struggling with rent or retirement accounts, the idea that Washington is criminalizing protest instead of solving real problems feels like mismanagement. So where does this go from here? 3 scenarios. Scenario 1. Courts strike it down quickly. Federal judges issue injunctions. The order is blocked, and the administration pivots to blaming activist judges. Scenario 2. The order lingers in legal limbo, with inconsistent enforcement across states. That creates confusion and fuels political theater. Scenario 3. The Supreme Court, now more conservative than in 1989, revisits the precedent and potentially narrows First Amendment protections. That would be a seismic shift in American law, reshaping protest rights for generations. And here's the bottom line. This isn't about whether you love or hate the flag. It's about whether the government can dictate the boundaries of free expression. Today, it's flag burning. Tomorrow, it could be something else. For ordinary Americans, the danger is clear. Once you let politicians decide what speech is too offensive to tolerate, you no longer live in a country of free people, you live in a country of permissions. Thanks for watching Sharp Angle. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because in a world where freedom and power collide, staying informed is not optional, it's essential.